This is Tom Duty, middle-aged American living in New Jersey near the Lincoln Tunnel. If you were to visit my website, you would type Howdy Doody into Google. You'll find the correct spelling of the famous puppet. You then combine Tom Duty in a Google search for my site, reading from discredited Rolling Stones fall 2014. The occasion is a year later, a year after Rolling Stones published Vanity Fair did a follow-up report on the explosive rape story published in Rolling Stone. I'll make one comment, unscripted, my own words at the beginning, and the balance of this will be exclusively text from the Rolling Stone report. I have revisited this story because I got duped. I read the story, and not for a second did I consider that it was not credible. To me, it was credible. Story told in Rolling Stones in the way that it was told. So I've returned to try to understand why I missed it. The beginning of part 2. Rape on campus. Wahoos are enthralled to be at UVA and can't wait to tell the reason why. Beginning surprisingly with Thomas Jefferson, whose lore is so powerfully woven into everyday UVA life that you practically expect to glimpse a man still walking around the grounds in his waistcoat and pantaloons. Nearly every student I interviewed found a way to mention TJ, speaking with zeal about their founding father's vision for an academic village in an idyllic setting in the Blue Ridge Mountains. They burble about UVA's honor code, solemn pledge not to lie, cheat, steal. Students are expected to snitch on violators who are expelled. UVA's emphasis on honor code is so pronounced since 1983. 183 people have been expelled for honor code violations, such as cheating on exams. And yet, paradoxically, not a single student has been expelled for sexual assault. Think about it, says Susan Russell, whose UVA daughter's sexual assault report helped trigger previous federal investigation. In what world do you get kicked out for cheating, but if you rape someone, you can stay? Attorney Wendy Murphy, who has filed Title IX complaints and lawsuits against the school, including UVA, argues it's a matter of sexual violence. Ivy League and Division I schools' fixation with prestige is their downfall. These schools love to pretend they protect the children as if they were their own, but it's not true. They're interested in money, Murphy says. In these situations, the one who gets the most protection is either a wealthy kid, a legacy kid, or an athlete. The more privileged he is, the more likely the woman has to die before he's held accountable. Indeed, UVA is the same campus where the volatile relationships of lacrosse star George Hughley V and his girlfriend Erdely Love were seen as unremarkable. His jealous rage fanned by over-the-top drinking until the 2000 day he kicked open the door and beat her to death. UVA President Teresa Sullivan denies the administration's sweeping sexual assault under the rug. If we're trying to hide the issue, we're not doing a very good job of it, she says, noting that in past February, UVA hosted the first ever sexual assault summit for college administrators. It's true that recently, while under closed government security, the school has made some encouraging changes, including designating most UVA authority figures as mandatory reporters of sexual assault and teaming up with student activists to create a bystanders intervention campaign. Students praise UVA's dean for caring folks who answer late night calls from victims and even make emergency room visits. And yet, the UVA public relations team seemed unenthused about this article, canceling my interview with the head of UVA's Sexual Misconduct Board and forbidding other administrators to cooperate. Even students seemed infected by their anxiety about how members of the administration might appear. And when President Sullivan was at last made available for an interview, her most frequently invoked answer about specific questions about sexual assault handling at UVA, while two other UVA staffers were in on a recorded call, was, "I don't know." All you girls from Mary Washington at RMWC never let a cavalier an inch above your knee. He'll take you to his fraternity house and fill you full of beer, and soon you'll be the mother of a bastard cavalier. Rugby wrote. Organization that doubles as a support group, sitting with Emily, Jackie poured out her story, wiping her eyes with a napkin as she. Listeners, forgive me. I went from 8 to page 22. That's up 28 pages. I will now go from 8 to 9. 2 weeks after Jackie's rape, she ran into Drew during her lifeguard ship at the UVA pool. "Jackie," Drew said, startling her, "are you ignoring me?" She'd switched her shift in hopes of never seeing him again. Since the Phi Kappa Psi party, she barely left her dorm room, fearing a glimpse of her attackers. Jackie stared at Drew, unable to speak. "Wanted to thank you for the other night," Drew said. "I had a great time." Jackie left her shift early. She wasn't feeling well. Then she walked back to her dorm and crawled under her covers. She didn't go to classes for the rest of the week and soon quit her lifeguard job. The first time she could remember quitting anything. She would never again return to anthropology course, she shared with one of her assailants. She was constantly on the edge of panic, plagued by flashbacks, and disgusted by her own naivete. She obsessed over what easy prey she had been. As the attention-starved freshman who for weeks drank up Drew's flirtations, I still grapple with, did I do something I could have been to construe as that what I wanted? She said. Before Jackie left for college, her parents, a Vietnam vet and a retired military contractor, and a stay-at-home mom, had lectured her about avoiding the perils of social scene, stressing the importance of her studies since Jackie hoped to get into med school. Jackie had strained relationship with her father, in whose eyes she'd never felt good enough, and always responded by exceeding expectations. Honor roll, swim team, first violin chair, becoming a role model for her two younger brothers. Jackie had been looking forward to college as an escape, a place to even defy her parents' wishes and go to a frat party. And I guess they were right, she says bitterly. She was having an especially difficult time figuring out how to process the awful night. Became her small social circle seemed so overwhelmed. For the first month of school, Jackie had latched onto a crew of light-hearted social strivers, and her pals were now impatient for Jackie to rejoin the merriment. You're still upset about that? Andy asked one Friday night when Jackie was crying. Cindy, a self declared hookup queen, said she didn't see why Jackie is so bent out of shape. Why didn't he have fun with it? Cindy said. A bunch of hot, fi guys. One of Jackie's friends told her, unconcerned, Andy said he had a bad experience at a frat, and he'd been a baby ever since. Some of my hallmates were skeptical, says one survivor of rape. They were silent and avoided me afterwards. It made me doubt myself. The reaction of dismissal, downgrading the doubt, is a common theme UVA rape survivors hear, including from women. Some of my hallmates were skeptical, recalls recent grad Emily Renda, who says weeks into her first year, she was raped after a party. They were silent and avoided me afterwards. It made me doubt myself. Other students encounter more overt hostility, as when a first year student confined her assault to a friend. She thought I was just looking for attention, says the undergrad, shrugging off rape, pointing her fingers at the victim to be a self protective maneuver for women, a form of wishful thinking to reassure themselves they could never be so vulnerable to violence. For men, skepticism is a form of self protection. Too much of their lives, they've looked forward to the hedonistic fun of college, bearing every expectation of booze and no strings sex. The rape heralds are uncomfortable idea, all the harmless mayhem may not be so harmless after all. Easter, then to assume the girls is lying, even though studies indicate that false rape reports account for at most 8% of reports. And so at UVA, where social status is paramount, outing oneself as a rape victim can be a form of social suicide. I don't know many people who are engrossed in a party scene and have spoken out about their sexual assaults, says third year student Sara Surface. After all, no one climbs the social ladder only to cast themselves back down. Emily Renda, for one, quickly figured out that few classmates were sympathetic to her plight, and instead channeled her despair into partying. My drinking didn't stand out, says Renda, who often ended her nights passed out on the bathroom floor. It doesn't make you wonder how many others are doing what I did, drinking to self medicate. By the middle of the first semester, Jackie's alarm would ring in her dorm room until one of her sweet classmates would pad down the hall and turn it off. Jackie would barely stir in bed. That was when we realized She was even there, remembers sweet mate Rachel Soltis. At the beginning of the year, she seemed like a normal, happy girl, always with friends. Then her door was closed all the time. We just figured out, long since abandoned by her original crew, Jackie had slept through half a semester worth of classes and had bought a length of rope in which to hang herself. Instead, as the semester crawled to an end, she called her mother. "Come and get me," Jackie told her, crying. "I need your help." The first weeks of freshman year, when students were vulnerable to sexual assault, spend a Friday night mid-September walking along Ruby Road at UVA, and you can begin to see why hundreds of women in crop tops and men in khaki shorts stagger between handsome fraternity houses against a call and response soundtrack of "Woo!" and breaking glass. "Do you know where Delta Sig is?" A girl slurs, slosh. Behind her, one of her dozen or so friends stumbles into the street, sending a beer bottle shattering. "Woo!" calls a faraway voice. "These are all first years," narrates one of my small group of underclass guides. We walked the curving length of tree-lined Rugby Road as they explained the scene. The woman rattle off, which is one of the known as a roof rat, where supposedly four girls have been drugged and raped, in which a house and a friend has recent bad experience. The Wahoo euphemism for sexual assault. Studies have shown that fraternity men are 3 times as likely to commit rape, and a spat of recent high-profile cases illustrate that the dangers can lurk at frat parties like University of Wisconsin Milwaukee frat accused of using color-coded hand stamps as a signal to roofie their guests. In this fall's suspension of Brown University's chapter of Phi Psi of all fraternities after a partygoer tested positive for date rape drug GHB, presumably the UVA freshmen wobbling around us are oblivious to any specific hazards along Rugby Road. Having just arrived on campus, they can hardly tell one fraternity from another, and we passed another frat house. One of my guides offered, "I know a girl who got assaulted here." Frats are often the sole option for underage drinking looking to party. Since bars are off limits, sororities are dry, and first year students don't get many invites to apartment soirees. Instead, the kids crowd the walkways of a big anonymous frat houses vying for entry. Hot girls who are drunk always get in. "Good idea to act drunker than you are," says third year Alexandria Pinkleton, expertly clad in a UVA after dark uniform of a midriff bearing sleeveless top and shorts. "Also, you have to seem very innocent and vulnerable. That's why they love first year girls." Once successfully inside the frat house, women play the role of grateful guests in an unfamiliar territory where the men control the variables. In dark, loud basements, girls accept drinks that are poured onto dance floors to the ground and groped, and later, often having lost sight of their friends, led to the bathrooms or up the stairs for privacy. Most of that hooking up is consensual, but against the backdrop, as psychologist David Liska discovered, lurk undetected predators. LESAC 2002 groundbreaking study of more than 1,800 college men found that roughly 9 out of 10 rapes are committed by serial offenders who are responsible for an astonishing average of 6 rapes each. None of the offenders in LESAC's study have ever been reported. LESAC's founding appended general presumptions about campus sexual assaults. It implied that most incidents are not bumbling, he said, she said, miscommunications, but rather deliberate crimes by serial sex offenders. In the study, LESAC subjects described the way in which they used camouflage of college as fruitful rape hunting grounds. They told LESAC they targeted freshmen for being most naive of the least experienced drinkers. Once offenders described how the party hardy friends would help incapacitate his victims, and we always had some kind of punch. It made it real sweet juice. It was really powerful stuff. The women wouldn't know what hit them. Presumably, the friends mixing the drinks did so without realizing the offender's plot. Just as when they probably high-fived him next morning, he didn't realize that the behavior had just endorsed. That's because the serial rapist behavior can look ordinary at college. They're not acting in a vacuum, observes LESAC of predators. They echoed the message and that the culture that's around them, the objections of degradation of women. One need only glance around at some recent college hijinks to see spectacular examples of the way abasement of women had broken through no-holds-barred misogyny. At Dartmouth, students' how-to rape guide posted online this past January. Yale pledges chanting, yes means no means yes, yes means anal. And despite the air of mannered civility, UVA has been in the naughty fun for at least 70 years with its jolly fight song Rugby Road, which celebrates the sexual triumphs of UVA fraternity men, named for the very same street where my guides and I now envelop in a thickering crowd of wasted first years. Through the decades, the song has expanded to 35 verses and more recent student-penned stanzas, shredding the song's winking tone into favor of some more jarringly explicit. 100 delta gammas, 1,000 AZTs, 10,000 phi-psi bitches, or pi-phi bitches get down on their knees. But the ones we hold true, the ones that we hold dear, are the ones who stay up late and take it in the rear. In 2010, Rugby Road was banned from football games despite a petition calling for an integral part of integral part of UVA culture. But Wahoos, fearing the loss of tradition, can take heart that Rugby Road verses are still performed on campuses by UVA's oldest cappella group, the Virginia Gentlemen a cappella group. It's the end of part 2. I'm roughly halfway through. I will a couple of words of my own unscripted. In the text attached to this YouTube video, is a very short roster of the people of this story. It's the same roster I'll use when I read Vanity Fair, with 2 different writers, 2 different publications. Their style is slightly different. So people who are the same in both stories get referenced differently. I was confused by it. I made that roster as an assistant to help people not get confused as I did. It's been Tom Duty, middle-aged American living in New Jersey near the Lincoln Tunnel. If you were to visit my website, you would type Howdy Doody into Google. You'll find the correct spelling of the famous puppet. You then combine Tom Duty in a Google search for my site. Thank you for listening. Have a good day, good evening, or restful night's sleep. Ciao.